Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Shalom, Nama Budaya. So now we are from Group 4. We're gonna presenting one of related topic in public diplomacy, which is about human rights diplomacy and its practices and its challenges. And we are taking specific case both body inside Southeast Asia that really concerned with human rights promotion, which is ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights or AICHR, and we're also gonna take how it it's addressing human rights abuse inside the region in the Rohingya crisis in 2017. Before we jump into the introduction, first I would like to present my members, which is first there is Intan Sari Rahayu, and there is Jennifer Putra Legiati, Raihan Putri Haikal, and lastly I myself, Raymond Ephraim Yusli.
The responsibility to protect is an emerging norm and political principle for preventing and responding to four distinct crimes that are genocide, war crimes, crime against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. Collectively referred to as cruelty crimes or R2P crimes, R2P is not allowed or a legally binding framework. The crime it seeks to prevent are defined in international law, such as the Genocide Convention, the Geneva Conventions, and additional protocols and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. But R2P itself is not a legal framework. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations officially inaugurated the Asian Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission or AICHR in October 2009. In order to increase public awareness of human rights among the Asian people, AICHR will initially focus on advancing human rights and will not accept or investigate complaints of human rights violations.
So now first we're gonna talk about what is actually human rights diplomacy and what is it so important to be upheld. So, human rights diplomacy refers to the practice of influencing others, which advocates the importance of human rights. It means it requires diplomatic channels and strategies to promote the human rights upon government, international organizations, civil society, and other stakeholders. The engagement actually emphasizes the rejection of human rights abuse and push the enactment of foreign policies to preserve human rights. Human rights itself is a concept related to the human belief on morality, to respect for all sentient beings. It's pointing out all well-being have their own right to live life and equal from one to another as the same human being. This is very important because if we reflect on world society, genocide, discrimination, gender inequality, minority persecution have occurred many times and may happen again in the future. That's why human rights must be upheld and applied in every society.
Okay, so here I will explain about how AICHR promote human rights in the Southeast Asia. Promote is carried out in ASEAN forums. AICHR holds two regular meetings per year and additional meeting if needed, as well as promote to the ASEAN Minister of Foreign Affairs. The second is the promote is also reflected into ASEAN Charter on November 20 and 2007 in Singapore as a collective agreement that is legally binding in a common container. And then the third is the extension of AICHR refers more the concept Asian way, which contains principles non-interference that works for promotion. And then AICHR is a comprehensive body with a sectoral mandate that handle matters related to human rights cooperation with other ASEAN bodies, external partners, and stakeholders. Next is the mandate and function of AICHR contained in Article 4 TOR. AICHR first is developing strategy for human and protection human rights. The second is developing ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. Third is increasing public awareness of human rights. Fourth, advancing ability improvement for the sake of implementation. Human rights and agreement obligation. Five is encouraging ASEAN country to ratify human rights instruments. Six is advancing the implementation of ASEAN instruments. Seven is provide consulting service and technical assistance towards human rights issue. Eight is conducting dialogue and consultation with ASEAN agency other. And then nine is consult with regional and international institutions. 10 is get information from ASEAN member countries about the promotion and protection of human rights. And then 11 is strive for a common approach and position about human rights that are in the instinct of ASEAN. 12 is prepare studies on thematic issue of human rights in ASEAN. So 30 it is submit an annual report of activities or other reports that required at the ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting. And then the last is reform other tasks that might be assigned by ASEAN Foreign Minister meeting. Okay, so for the protection human rights in the region, based on the table, Indonesians, Philippines, Thailand already have a fairly well established national human rights system mechanism, while Malaysia, Singapore, and has a national human rights system and mechanism accompanied by a number of restrictions. But Myanmar is in the process of transition to prove that it is also able to take the road of democracy and human rights. And also Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, whose human rights system and mechanism have not been significantly seen. This show that actually the nation, no human rights system and mechanism of member countries can be educate modality for the formation of ASEAN human rights system and mechanism. Okay, next is some of the challenges faced by AICHR in the implementation of its duties include first, there is a sharp difference in development democracy and human rights between ASEAN member countries, so that the achievement on agreement on human rights issue become quite difficult. And then the second is AICHR is an intergovernmental institution and its implementation is more as a political negotiation institution than a human rights institution. Third is the application of relatively reduced and conversion non-intervention principles. And then fourth, weak independence is like in terms membership, member responsibility, accountability, the government that points in terms of funding. Okay, the last is weak protection mechanism is like no authority to receive individual complaints, authority for investigation, country visit, and no discussion of country situation. The Commission also cannot impose sanctions for human rights violence that occur in a country, and the discussion of human rights issue can only be carried out at the level of dialogue.
So, um, now we are moving to a topic that talk about HR's involvement in human rights diplomacy, specifically in the Rohingya case in 2017. It's to give a real picture of how HR's response in dealing with human rights violation and its performance in promoting human rights. So, uh, Rohingya crisis is considered the worst human rights abuse inside Southeast Asia region. And as an overview, Rohingya is a part of the Muslim population in the Rakhine State, Myanmar. The problem is this minority group, according to UN, is the most persecuted minority group in the region, as they are very restricted on their movement, education, and also access to basic services such as healthcare. Even worse, it's done by the local government itself. And long story short, violence erupted in Rakhine State in 2017, which led to mass exodus of hundreds of thousands of Rohingyas to neighboring countries. Unfortunately, the HR itself, which is a body that should have specs specifically concerned with human rights, seems somewhat less visible and slow in responding to the case. Most likely, the main obstacle was due to the consensus and non-intervention principle of ASEAN hindering the process of resolution. But we are going to talk about it a little bit later in the upcoming topic. So, what HR did then to address the Rohingya crisis in 2017? So, the best HR could do was keep raising the issue with other Asian bodies and international organizations and advocating or engaging more for a regional approach to addressing the crisis. We can see through first through regional management strategy for an effective environmental impact assessment. It's actually a workshop inside Southeast Asia country within Southeast Asia countries, where in 2017 the workshop was held in Yangon, Myanmar. Even though the workshop didn't aim directly to tackle the Rohingya crisis, but the objectives of the workshop were to strengthen environmental protection policies in order to achieve sustainable development. This is a diplomacy step to increase human rights protection while also trying to influence Myanmar to be aware of the Rohingya minority side its country, and also the crisis that it it created. And the second is Forum Asia report in 2017, where HR planned in responding to the Rakhine State crisis were being outlined to the public. It's to increase advocacy of human rights upon the civil society and give awareness to the civil society and shape the attitude of civil society upon the human rights, the upholding of human rights inside the region. Although again, it's not giving a significant impact toward Myanmar actually. And the third is actually quite impactful, I think, because it's concerned about the representation of the sincerity of ASEAN members on human rights, on upholding human rights inside the region, which they also contributed to humanitarian aid. The prime example was Indonesia. Indonesia response as a representative from HR to conduct discussion between ASEAN members to carry out a protocol and also protection, which ensure the safety and the no, yeah, to ensure the safety of the refugees. And Indonesia was also the initiator to provide residence for the refugees in Indonesia, such as in Aceh there is a camp for the Rohingya people, and while other members such as Singapore pledged $100,000 to assist the humanitarian aid through the ASEAN Humanitarian Assistance Center. So, insight that we got from HR diplomatic effort to address the human rights abuse, notably in Rohingya crisis in 2017, we have learned that dialogue has been the key instrument for HR advocacy. Engagement through dialogue gives a sense of urgency towards human rights, notably the way HR approaches the stakeholder and also international community, along with the civil society in several platforms such as Forum Asia, will have an impact towards other state or organizations foreign policy to pressure the violation of human rights, which in the case of Rohingya made the Myanmar government accountable for it. And the second is HR is actually functioning as a promotion platform rather than taking action on human rights violations. It emphasizes HR's role as a consultative body to encourage human rights practices in the region, which means it can only make recommendations to ASEAN member states on human rights issues and has no capability to impose any sanction. Therefore, it actually lacking authority, but it can actually still pressuring Myanmar and upholding human rights by advocating as many stakeholders as possible to make a campaign about human rights inside the region, and also convince a global organization to impose sanctions for Myanmar. And the third is the principle of consensus and non-intervention can be can become problematic. We have known that under the ASEAN Charter, it recognizes consensus-based system and non-intervention principle that emphasizes the safety of state sovereignty and equality among members. However, to overcome the minority crisis in Myanmar, it requires legal action to take further investigation and upholding human rights. Yet, the consensus and non-intervention allowed Myanmar to to deny such resolution that makes the process of the Rohingya crisis slowly progressing. So, yeah, that's pretty much of what we got from the Rohingya crisis. It's HR's challenges in taking the issue, and is what its capability actually is. Yeah, that's pretty much of it.
So, for suggestion and conclusion is every nation, country, and international institution without exception must adapt to the changing global constellation, and that is constantly changing so drastically. This change presents new challenges and opportunities in the future. To minimize future challenge, each country needs to improve their public diplomacy because public diplomacy is a step to encourage national interests to create mutual understanding and influence public opinion. In other words, the role of this non-government actor has made policies that apply internationally, and there should be no distance from policies that apply nationwide. Public diplomacy can be done by socializing information through social media, which can be an effective way for government officials to reach domestic and foreign audience. In the form of reports, speech, press release, media outreach, or upfronts and reforms in the field of progressing and democratization of human rights, and the establishment of various states, government, or independent institutions that will directly strengthen states and community systems that ensure human rights protection, strengthen appropriate rules, and law enforcement, the life of democracy.
Okay, so here is our references to support our argument about human rights diplomacy, specifically about HR in promoting human rights diplomacy in Southeast Asia region, and also how it addressed human rights abuse in the case of Rohingya crisis in 2017. So I think that's pretty much of our presentation. Thank you so much for giving us opportunity to present about this topic, interesting topic, and also thank you so much for the attention. And I hope it could be an insightful presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu. Shalom Nama Budaya.